What's going on, guys? So I have finished Vinland Saga. I've caught up to the most recent chapters. Before I get into that, I just want to say that I feel like it's very important for these reviews for me to be as 100% as honest as I can possibly be about the things that I'm reviewing. Otherwise, how can I expect you guys to respect my opinion? Whether you respect it or not, that's up to you. But the point is, I don't want to just praise a series, and I don't want to just shit on a series. I want to be able to give you as complex of an analysis as I can. I want to tell you about the good, I want to tell you about the bad, what worked for me, what didn't. And that's not necessarily saying that what doesn't work for me shouldn't work for you. I mean, if you enjoyed it, then that's you, that's your perspective. One of my favorite quotes, and I can never remember who said the quote, but one of my favorite quotes is, one story read by 100 different people will be 100 different stories. And that's how I believe fiction to be, and that's what I kind of preach on this channel a lot of the times, that fictional stories are important because of how they connect with us as individuals. How do you interpret it? Because whatever you're going on in your life, whatever your life journey is, whatever you are experiencing, and you read something, it might click with you in a way that might not click with 99 other people. You might get something out of it that's different than everybody else. And that's why I even say whatever the author's intention is, that's not necessarily what it has to mean to you. That's my perspective on it, at the very least. Because everybody is coming at things with a different lens. Everybody is seeing things differently. Everybody has gone through a different life, a different upbringing, a different childhood. And there are so many different ways that you can read the same exact thing as somebody else and get something profoundly different out of it. So I just want to be able to say that these are my perspectives and opinions, and if you think differently, that's great, and that's fine, and that's okay, and I love discussing about it. I love discussions. I'm not a debate person because, honestly, I don't really care about changing your opinion, and usually when I'm debating somebody, I actually kind of like their opinion, and I know the purpose of the debate is to be stone cold and not change your opinion on anything, but I'm usually like, oh yeah, that's a really cool point. I'm so bad at that kind of shit. I'm much more of a discussion person. Here's what I liked, and then you tell me what you like. Anyways, so Rant Over. Basically, that's just the setup for what I want to say, is that these most recent chapters of Vinland Saga, I'm not really caring for that all that much. And I'll say that I know some people have told me that, oh, Vinland Saga is not good anymore. I wouldn't go that far, or that, it's not worth reading anymore, it's worth dropping. I would not go that far. But I was kind of hoping, because when I was reading Gantz, a lot of people said the final arc of Gantz isn't that good, you're not going to like it. And I loved the final arc of Gantz. It might be my favorite. Second favorite in Gantz. But, so I was hoping I would have the same reaction to Vinland Saga. I was hoping people would tell me, the recent chapters, they're not that good, yada yada. I was hoping I would come out of it being like, hey, they worked for me and here are the reasons why. But unfortunately, this time I do have to go with the majority and say that the most recent chapters of Vinland Saga are not that great, with the exception of a few. Now, I think a lot of it has to do with, there's a few things that I want to bring up. And I got to get my thoughts straight here of how I want to tackle this. This is off the cuff. I haven't written anything down, as most of these reviews are. First of all, I want to say one thing that I think is bringing it down is the pacing of the series right now. How it is really taking its time to getting towards the next arc, but not just with that, the pacing towards where the characters are headed right now, is the fact that they skipped over so much that could have been developed. So here's what irritated me, is that we got another time skip, and Vinland Saga has done time skips before, but it's always been kind of in a place where it made sense, where there wouldn't have been much going on between the interactions with the characters and what would have been happening emotionally, within the characters themselves, giving themselves development or changing or growth or something like that. However, this time, there's a massive little time skip that really skips over a lot of things that I wish I would have seen, and things that now we were just supposed to take for granted, when I don't feel any emotional connection to the things that I've read. Like, for example, Thorfinn now is with Gudrid, they're in a relationship, and the baby that they had found before is now a toddler. And this really irritated me because, one, I'm a sucker for romance stories to begin with. I know it might fool you, since Berserk, Gantz, and Vinland Saga are some of my favorite manga, but if you think about it, a lot of those do have a pretty strong connection to a love story within them. And I was hoping I would see a little bit of that in Vinland Saga. Now, I know there has never been a a love story really in Vinland Saga beforehand, except for Arnid and her husband, the escaped slave and everything. There was that little segment, but beyond that, there wasn't really. That's never been the prime focus of Vinland Saga. I know that's not the theme of Vinland Saga. I know that's not what it's about. But at the same time, you're dealing with our main protagonist, Thorfinn, here, and these are feelings and things that he's never experienced before because he's either been, you know, in war or a slave or traveling here and there. He's never been in a situation where he could develop a romantic connection with somebody, and now we have that opportunity and we completely skipped over it to where they're already together and they're just going to raise this child as their own child. And I don't know, something about that really irritated me, and I felt gypped. I felt a little like gypped about it because I wanted to see at least something. Now, maybe Makoto Yukimura is just not good at writing romance and he didn't want to even try. Maybe he thought that that's not my forte, so I'm just going to skip over it. And I can understand that, but as a reader, as somebody invested in the story, as somebody really invested in Thorfinn because I love his character, I was very upset to see that that segment of the story was completely skipped over. Especially the baby they had that's now a toddler, because I know they did not expect to have a baby with them during their journey. And I thought incorporating a baby into the main group of characters that we had was going to be like a very interesting, like, anxiety-inducing thing, because you have a baby that doesn't know, because if you're avoiding enemies or something like that, a baby doesn't know to be quiet. You know, it's going to cry whenever it wants to cry. It's going to poop whenever it wants to poop. Like, having a baby when you're in the world of Vikings and you're trying to avoid people trying to kill you is a incredibly anxiety-inducing thing, because you never know what the baby's going to do and you have to keep the baby safe. And there are so many different things we could have done with that along the lines of, like, should we even have this baby? Should we keep trying to get rid of it and then maybe growing more of an attachment to it? Like, there's so many things that they could have done with that as well that I feel like, again, was a missed opportunity. As well with the character of Einar, I feel like he really hasn't had any development since the end of the Slave arc. He did a little bit in the beginning of the Baltic arc when he was convincing Hild not to kill Thorfinn and everything, but beyond that, he really hasn't done much since then. And we also get a time skip that incorporates Sigurd as well, and Sigurd, again, like, he kind of got downgraded to comic relief for a while, and then he decides to oppose his father, inspired by Thorfinn, which was a good idea. I think that makes sense for his character, but again, there was a time skip. He leaves, he comes back, he has a kid now too, and Halfdan's just like, okay, well, the kid will inherit everything, so you're off the hook. And I just felt like it was so kind of convenient. Like, the time skip was so convenient to so many of the characters that I felt like it really gypped us out of a lot of narrative that we could have had that would have been really fun to experience. That's just my opinion on it, but for me, I was not a fan of that. Now we get into kind of the sociological, political aspect of Vinland Saga here and how it relates to our modern world. And how am I going to approach this topic? Okay, so there's two things here. The first one I'll get out of the way is Thorkel's son/daughter. Okay, so this character, Cordelia, which is a name I'll remember because I'm a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. Cordelia was born a boy, okay, but because her mother, who's Thorkel's son, Thorkel, okay? The big motherfucker, the guy that loves war, the freaking scary-ass, log-throwing, war-mongering, badass person that will, like, fight anybody he could possibly fight. That guy. He had a son. So, and he has great genetics as well. Should have been a bodybuilder or powerlifter. So, to save his son from war, the woman that had him told Thorkel that it was a girl, and thus Thorkel did not care because he couldn't raise him to be like a strong masculine man, right? So Thorkel left. And now the baby was raised as a girl. So now the baby's basically an adult, and biologically is a male, but still has the upbringing and mentality of being a girl because that's what they were brought up as, and enjoys being a girl. So essentially what that means is that Vinland Saga has incorporated a transgender character. If we're relating that to our real world circumstances, and since that's kind of a hot topic and it's something like trans rights and everything are brought up quite often, and yes, I do support the trans community and everything, since that is kind of a hot topic right now, it seems as though Makoto incorporated this character to sort of represent things that are happening in our real world times right now. And perhaps for some of you, me even saying that, even bringing it up, means that I'm drawing attention to the fact that it's might be a representation of a transgender character, and the point is, why can't it just be a character? Why do you have to think about it that way? Well, because I live in the real world, and when you see something like that, and you know that's a hot button topic, and you know that it's a thing that, you know, we as a culture, as a society, as people have to grow to learn and understand better as a collective, you can't ignore it when something like that comes up in a story, especially when the focus is saying that, hey, he was a boy, he got raised as a girl, and now he's a girl, and now he's giant, he looks like Thorkel, and he's got like little pigtails. Like, it's not something you can just ignore and just say, oh yeah, that's just another character, because it is vastly different than anything that's going on in Vinland Saga, and it has connections and ties to things that are happening in our real world. So I don't see how you can just ignore that, at least in my opinion. Now, I can understand why he would bring a character like that in here, especially with Thorfinn, you know, heading to a new world of Vinland where everything should be peaceful. He wants people to be tolerant. He wants people to live in peace, to raise each other. He doesn't want us to have weapons, which I'll get into in just a second. So there's a lot of things happening here that, again, I think are related to our real world. But the character herself feels so vastly, totally different from Vinland Saga as a whole. And this goes along the lines of Vinland Saga has been incorporating a lot more humor as time has gone on. It didn't bother me too much at first, but now I'm starting to see it more. It's kind of like Berserk did that as well. It incorporated a lot more humor in its like latter half. And there is a lot of humor involving the character, and that's not me poking fun. That's like literally in the chapters. There's humor involved. I mean, it is humorous to see somebody as giant as Thorkel, you know, dressed, you know, being a girl, with the pigtails and everything. So there is a humor aspect to it, and it seems like most of the characters are pretty cool with that being the case and want to take her to Vinland with them, and I can understand that. So where the character's going to go from now on, I mean, I'm not sure. Looks like she is going to join the trip to Vinland and everything, so we'll see what happens with that. She'll probably become a powerful ally because, I mean, as strong as she is, so we'll see what happens with her character. But the introduction and the backstory and just everything about it just kind of like took me right out of the story, to be honest with you guys. And then we have the theme of going to Vinland without any weapons. And again, I felt like this was very reminiscent of real-world scenarios where, and I've brought this up before, I brought this up in a Rurouni Kenshin video, which I had to take down because copyright Shueisha, you know how that goes. Anyway, so the video's not up anymore. But there's a scene early in Rurouni Kenshin where he talks about how a sword is a tool for killing, and if you believe a sword is for anything else, that's kind of foolish. You know, regardless of how much you want to say that it protects, you know, at the end of the day, it is a killing implement. So that's kind of what he was saying. And I related that kind of to our modern day as far as, you know, guns go. And just to be clear with you guys, I am pro Second Amendment, by the way, the right to bear arms. I am, okay, thumbs up on that. But personally, if they did not exist, it would not break my heart. If all guns disappeared, I'd be like, okay, that's great, that's fantastic. However, that's not going to happen. Therefore, protection is important because as good of a person as you are, as humble and great and, you know, as Thorfinn-like as you are, that doesn't mean that the person next to you or the person breaking into your home is going to give a shit if they have a gun or if they have, you know, something else. So it's important in our modern day world, I feel like, to adapt to the current situation in order to defend yourself against current threats. So before, like, if it was up to me, I would just own swords and machetes because I'm a blade person. That's what I like. I like clubs too, you know, bash somebody over the head. But that's just not realistic in, you know, a protection survival situation if, you know, worst comes to worst. But in Vinland Saga, we're not up to guns yet, so we're up to swords. So the idea that Thorfinn is saying is to take away all swords. And the argument that he's getting back is like, well, what if the other people, what if the natives there have weapons? So they have arrows, spears, swords, maybe. They don't know. Then what are you going to do? And I do feel like this is a discussion that should happen. And I do believe that Thorfinn's idea is, in theory, a very good idea and would ultimately help the human race if we could develop a trade system and a mutual respect and a mutual, you know, you help me, I help you kind of situation And again, it makes me reflect on our real world. And there is a bunch of characters here that don't understand it, and I believe they are smuggling swords on board. So somebody will have swords or a weapon on board once they get to Vinland. And I think it's a worthy discussion to have, but at the end of the day, I do think it's flawed in that Thorfinn, I was reading the comments on my last video, and somebody mentioned how Thorfinn, miraculously gets out of every situation without having to kill anybody or to do anything. He's in the middle of a war, and everything kind of works out his way. And I thought about it, and it's kind of true. It's kind of true in the last arc. Although I liked the last arc and everything that happened in it, I thought it was very entertaining. I didn't think it was as good as the first two, but I understand what you're saying, that he has this kind of like protagonist plot armor where he could say things and do things like, I'm gonna fight you and not kill you and all this stuff, and be able to do it and get out of it, just get out of the situation. So my hope for Vinland Saga going forward, this is my hope, that once they get to Vinland, or perhaps on the way to Vinland, Thorfinn's ideology will really be drawn into question, and I hope that we will find some sort of balanced middle ground between these two extremes, between war and between complete pacifism. I hope that there is some sort of middle ground that we can find between those two to kind of balance out Thorfinn's philosophy, because he really went from one extreme end of the spectrum to the other, and it's just neither one I feel like is realistic. Neither one I feel would work in our real world. I don't think like getting rid of all weapons would really solve everything, but I also don't think everybody having a weapon would solve things either. And it's a very complicated thing, and I don't have the answers, but my hope for Vinland Saga, at least as a series, as a fictional series going forward, that Thorfinn is faced with those consequences of not bringing any weapons. I feel like there needs to be more struggle for him. He can't have everything figured out by what he's thinking now. There's got to be something that pulls him in a different direction, in a middle ground sort of direction, and can figure it out. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe that's the problem Makoto Yukimura is having. Maybe, he doesn't know how to get out of this corner that he wrote himself in. I don't know. Or maybe the series will end with the question, like, we don't know. We don't know. I don't know. But what I can say is that Vinland Saga is still one of my favorite series. It's still in my top 10. But I will say, and I will admit and concede, that the newest chapters are a bit disappointing. And I'm hoping that once we get to Vinland, or at least on the journey to Vinland, we get something a little bit better than what we have been getting. But real quick, there was a great chapter with Leif Erikson where he goes to stops to see him, and he calls him father, and he thinks about him, Askeladd, and Thors, who all sort of represented a father figure role in his life in different ways. And again, that's balance, right? Because you have Thors, who was the way he was, and Askeladd, very different people, but both very, on their mission, on their purpose, father figures in a way. And then you have Leif Erikson, who's kind of like the caring, nurturing, piece of the masculinity puzzle there. So, there's a book called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, and it's sort of like the four aspects of your personality, of like masculinity in a way, where King basically represents your ability to kind of be stoic over everything and kind of take control of everything that's happening in your life, be like, okay, this, organizing, being the king of your own life. Warrior is your drive to go out and get things done, like I have to do this, you're on a mission, let's go, get it done. Magician is sort of like your technical skill, sort of like your science or your puzzle solving, or anything like that, any kind of like technical skill that you have. Knowledge, wisdom, things like that also. And lover, of course, is your compassion, your love, your nurturing aspect. And so, like, if you attribute this to Thorfinn's father figures, so that would basically put Thors would be the king because he was kind of in control of everything that was happening. Askeladd would be the warrior, and Leif Erikson would be the lover. So that just leaves the magician aspect. So I wonder who Leif might fall a little bit into that too, but that's just kind of interesting to think about, that he kind of has all these kind of representations of different aspects of masculinity as his father figures. I think that's really cool. Anyways, guys, what do you think about the most recent chapters of Vinland Saga, please put that down in the comments below. Thank you for listening to this long rant and review. I'm sorry if I let you guys down with how I feel about the most recent chapters, but like I said, integrity is important, and I gotta be honest with you guys. So if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, comment, share the video if you want to, subscribe if you want to stick around and see more. Other than that, guys, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next time.